Now the question for today. Is woman in a permanently subordinate position to man, or is she in a complementary position? And here's how the church fathers answered that question. In the natural and close union of Christian marriage, woman seems at first glance to occupy a subordinate position, analogous to that assigned to her by pagan society. It is true that the fathers repeat from the Old and New Testaments that woman submits to man on account of her weakness. But it is a free submission, for the wife is equal to the husband by nature and by her rank in the conjugal union. If she must serve, it is in the Christian sense, through love. She must be as a sister placed in his sight as the church is in the sight of her head. She and her husband do not form two separate beings. They only make together one person, of whom the husband is the head. It is no longer the olden slavery of woman, though. She is raised and equals the husband in dignity, whilst seeing in him the head of the family. Christianity could never have proclaimed an emancipation of woman as it was carried out by the Roman ladies of the decadence, or as it is taught by modern socialism. With marvelous intelligence of the needs and of nature and life, two domains are divided between husband and wife, so as to claim the whole activity of each. Human life has two sides, public and private. God has given to each sex the limits which none pass without penalty. Neither men nor women ever leave their own sphere without wounding the universal conscience of the human race. Now that's a point of view peculiar to the Victorian era, but nevertheless we should think about it today. According to the fathers, outside business is given to man, the forum, the senate, the camps, whilst to woman are given internal household duties. Chrysostom says, she can neither carry arms, nor vote in the assemblies, nor manage the commune, but she can weave thread, give better advice than her husband about domestic matters, rule and keep order in her household, superintend the servants, and bring up the children. Each sex has its special vocation. God has not given all to one, he has wisely divided it. That's the end of the quote from Chrysostom, who, by the way, lived about 400 years after the apostles. Thus the wife, instead of being the servant of the husband, is his companion and helper. She is, according to the beautiful ideas of the fathers, his indispensable complement. It is only through her that he becomes all that he ought to be in the accordance with the intentions of God. It is woman who comforts man and gives him common courage. To quote again from Chrysostom, nothing, he says, can better mold man than a pious and wise woman. It is proved because many violent, harsh, passionate men have been led to gentler feelings through the influence of their wives. But on the other hand, you might get the impression from this that the only domain of woman was in the house. The fathers, knowing how woman pities and compassionates, or is that compassionates is a verb that's fallen out of favor, compassionates more easily than man, give to her, besides household duties, a mission away from home. They do not refuse to widen the sphere of her activities, but they do not call her to mix in the struggles of men, or to take any occupation contrary to the genius of her sex. Her appointed task is one of consolation and charity, caring for the poor, visiting the sick, consoling the afflicted. The Christian wife, as drawn by the fathers, is modest, pious, fearing the voluptuous or barbarous spectacles of paganism, seldom leaving her house, but where, instead of receiving lovers or actors, she hospitably entertains those who are unhappy or poor foreigners, strangers in other words. When she goes out, it is not to the circus or bath, pompously with a troop of slaves, but covered with a veil. She goes quietly to church, or the dwelling of a poor person. It was rightly said that she forms the most beautiful ornament of her husband and the joy of her family. Briefly, she is admirable. We may be permitted to add the portrait drawn towards the end of the 4th century by Bishop Asterius of Amasia. Quote, she is thy member, thy helper, thy aid in the trials of life. She attends thee in sickness, comforts thee in affliction. She is the guardian angel of thy home, the keeper of thy wealth. She by this time was commonly the household and family banker. She suffers the same evils as thou, and enjoys the same pleasures. If thou hast riches, she takes care of them. If thou art poor, she will make the most of thy small means. She resists misfortune with strength and courage. Thanks to the tie which unites her to thee, she bears the painful burden of educating her children. So she is the banker of the family and the teacher of the family, and takes the lead, therefore, not only in family, but in community, in wealth management, you might call it, in wisdom, in being the principal educator of the children, and of course in charity and love, both in the home and in the community and church. If man, therefore, is given the public sphere, where he has to take principal responsibility for peace and for order and for public mission and public good, well, then you see the full complementarity of the two sexes, in that both sexes have peculiar skills by the design of God, skills that complement their traits of character as well. They are kings and queens of two spheres. One, the personal and private, and woman is supreme in that domain, and the other, the public sphere, and man is given that peculiar and distinct job. So this is the viewpoint of the church fathers, as Schmidt outlines here. What we have to debate today is whether or not we have outgrown this viewpoint, because it is fairly consistent up until, as I said before, the end of the Victorian era, when this was translated into English. This is the viewpoint that has maintained in the church. And as Smith puts it, we challenge these norms at our own peril. So, we need to wrestle with these traditional views, indeed. We don't have to accept them because they're traditional, but we do have to think them through carefully before abandoning them. That's Professor Schmidt of Strasbourg, The Social Results of Early Christianity.